What happens when someone is born under the influence of Jupiter, which is all about your sense of gaining luck in your life, how you get lucky, how you feel very fortunate. It also can represent philosophy, long distance travel. And so there's many things that Jupiter represents. And so we're going to talk about Jupiter specifically in the sign of Gemini in the birth chart. So what does this mean? Well, the very first thing is that Gemini is it's an air sign, so it's very intellectual. It's very much in the mind, in the head, very um, mental. It's very intellectual. It's very curious. Gemini is about being curious and open to new information, and open to information via the internet, books, the people that you're in conversation with. You know, whatever the medium is of that communication, Gemini is about curiosity, um, to that new information. They're very much into writing and speaking. Those are the two, Gemini areas. They have the gift of the gab. They're very, very great communicators. They attract the most good fortune when they are open-minded. They're also very versatile, able to do, a lot of different things, not be skilled in one area, but be skilled in a lot of different areas. Um, they gain good fortune when they're social, when they're opening up to others, when they're talking, when they're communicating, having conversations, and when they're communicative. They're very intelligent individuals. Um, from what they've learned, they know a lot from what they have learned. They're very knowledgeable, and they want to share that knowledge with others. They're very, very eager to not only learn the information, but as soon as they learn it, they feel the need to share it with somebody else. Or as soon as they come to a realization of something, they want to share it with somebody else. I find this to be the case in my own life, having two planets in Gemini in my natal chart, plus my descendant in Black Moon Lilith in Gemini, so four Gemini placements in my chart. Um, that when I want to share knowledge, I can talk quite a bit about what I'm enthusiastic about. And, I can go on when it comes to that knowledge if I have a lot to share, depending upon how much I have to share. Um, and, y- y- that's what I want to say here. Um, of course, my Mercury is in Taurus, so I'm more, um, I speak with purpose. I get to the point. I don't beat around the bush. I don't talk just to talk. So Mercury, which rules Gemini, is in the sign that comes before Gemini in my natal chart. So that, you know, changes it a little bit. That adds to it. That adds kind of flavor and texture to it. So anyway, they're great listeners. They can make wonderful listeners if you have this placement. You are great at listening to others. And you gain good fortune when you listen to others and actively listen, not just hear them. Because when you're hearing something, you're not interpreting the information, you're not digesting the information, you're not applying the information to yourself, and you're not comprehending that information. when you're listening, you're doing just that. And so Gemini is, this placement is great at doing that. So they have a great ability to absorb information. Um, so they are open to new information. They are so open, in fact, that they get swayed by the wind, so to speak. And Gemini is very ungrounded in its energy. It's mutable air. It's very much in its head, very flighty, very, communicative, very mental, very chatty. And so it can lose its footing on reality, maybe sometimes. But mainly it can lose its sense of being grounded in the body. So mindfulness and meditation can be very, very good for them. Grounding, centering, focusing on your breath. Walks in nature, barefoot on the grass. I really, really highly recommend all those grounding exercises, such as yoga and those kind of things, for individuals who have strong Gemini energy or for individuals who have displacement, because they need the grounding, and they also lose their values, what matters to them. It's so important to have values of these are the things that matter to me, and not just I'm just so curious to everything, but these are the things, not these things, but these things. I can name my top five or six, or maybe Gemini would be eight to nine values that are very, very important to them. But when they can narrow it down, which is not, what Gemini wants to do, it wants to expand. When Gemini can narrow down their values into what matters most to them and focus their attention on those areas and learn and be curious and learn about things in the range of those values, then they can um, really find more meaning in their life in the long run. So they um they have very, very strong charm. They can be very charming. They can also be very witty. They have a great sense of humor. Um, they may feel very comfortable having intellectual experiences, especially with others. They want to expand their knowledge and intellectual horizons, kind of what I was already talking about. Um, Oral presentations, giving speeches and those kind of things, of all kinds, research speeches, wedding toasts, funeral speeches, um, whatever it is. They're great at that. They're great at communication. They're great at teaching. They're all about conveying the information in a way that is that particular person in particular would understand that information, because Gemini is about learning. And we all learn differently. We all have our own ways of learning and our own learning styles. So one way of learning for one individual, like a visual learner, could be very, very different than a more intellectual reading type learner. And so they're very, very attuned to that. And they're all about they can gain good fortune when they convey information in a way where they can understand that person very, very well. They can get to know them, where they can teach that information, communicate that information to individuals, to the certain individuals in ways that they can understand that information. So, they're also very, very good at sharing knowledge with others, as I've talked about before. They're great at debating. Also, that could be another thing. You're constantly receiving and processing information. You're constantly learning information, processing information, interpreting it, putting it into your mind. This can overwhelm you with absorbing information and overworking your mind, where you can have burnout and mental overload, where this is the stimulus of your mind can be very restless. And so relax the mind. Stop always getting so caught up in, oh, I need to learn, and know when to detach from when you get so caught up in the cycle of, um, constantly learning and changing what you're doing and getting so wrapped up in that. Know when to pull back when you become overwhelmed. Um, Notice when you feel overwhelmed, detach and go at life from a slower, more peaceful place, and a more grounded place, I should say. So, stimulation could come out of your mind and ears, possibly. You may be too caught up in your head, sometimes too wrapped up in your head. That's a Gemini tendency, especially with Jupiter and Gemini. Jupiter is overindulgence. Jupiter is, let's make this even bigger. Jupiter has no filter, no limit. It just, it's like there's no off button to Jupiter. And so you can overindulge in learning. It, everything in moderation. Everything in moderation. Too much of one thing is not a good thing. So when you're constantly learning and constantly changing what you're doing and learning a little bit about this topic, a little bit about that topic, I'm going to get to that later. Constantly so caught up in your head all the time, then you can get so caught up in your head and then it doesn't serve you. So you're very, very good at multitasking as well. You're great at that. You're very, very good at at doing one thing and then doing another thing at the same time. Areas that you might be interested in include history, education, literature. They're really into stories. Those are the topics you may be interested in. You're very, very good at Gemini rules siblings, your connection with your siblings, your primary education is also ruled by Gemini, your immediate environment. Your house, your community is ruled by Gemini. It rules, you can have very, very good relationships with your acquaintances, such as neighbors. Um, you're always reading or on the internet observing new information. You're always, your mind is always on, basically. It's never off, it's never resting. You're either reading, you're either having conversations, you're either on the internet, you're either watching something such as a documentary or something. Like you're constantly feeding yourself with new information, constantly. You want to learn about everything. I mean, everything, anything. I mean, you're open to everything because you're curious about astrology, physics, math, literature, history, sociology, philosophy. I could go on, everything. Um, and again, coming back to these are the things that I am most interested in. And when you can take the deep dive into, um, y- y- these certain topics, instead of having a superficial understanding of a lot of things, you're taking a deep dive into one topic and you're really investing that, then you can really enjoy it and find more fulfillment out of it. and get more meaning out of it, and you can learn a lot more. And in the long run, you realize that superficial learning just doesn't cut it, because you're gonna cut yourself out of, all your options, and you're gonna burn yourself out of the wanting to learn if you don't narrow down your focus first of all, and if you do not moderate yourself. This is a process that we learn as we grow. And maybe in a way, I have learned this in my life as well. What works and doesn't work for me when it comes to this. And, you know, focusing on, a topic, or, even just two topics, um, instead of all these multiple topics, all these multiple projects that you're starting, and all these multiple projects you're doing at the same time, and all these books you're starting, like narrow it down. Focus on one thing and narrow your attention down. You'll get way more out of it. Trust me on this. As somebody who has, 4 Gemini placements in my chart. So they need variety. They absolutely need variety. They can't be stuck doing the same thing for a long time. They need change. They need stimulation. They get bored of the same thing when they keep doing the same pattern over and over again. The same predictable pattern and the stability, and like they get bored, they get uninterested, and they move on to something else that is different and that is new and that is exciting for them, that lights them up, that gives them, that spark, and that gives them the variety. Now, another downside of this placement is you're getting so caught up in your head, so caught up in the intellectual and theoretical approach to the information, that you're missing out on learning the very important and necessary practical information and practical skills. You can get so caught up in, learning and reading and, watching videos, that where is the practical skills that you need to learn? Cooking, doing the dishes, all these kind of things like that. And that can, Gemini could be like, rolling their eyes to that and be like, oh, well, that's so boring. But choose to do the practical things that are most exciting, and find practical things that do give you joy and do give you excitement and do turn you on, and that you are curious about, and that you find pleasure in doing, and focus on those things, instead of getting so caught up in theoretical information all the time. And you're not learning much practical knowledge as well, and you're not taking the information. You're having the theoretical understanding of it, but you're not applying the information practically into your life, into others' lives. Where's the practical application for that information? That's really a question that you can ask yourself. Um, is how can I take this information, apply it to my life? How does this relate to my life? That kind of thing like that. And, how can I apply this information? So now another aspect of this placement is, you may be good with money, Mercury, rules Gemini, good with details, numbers, all this kind of things. It also rules Virgo, so that may be a huge thing. You really value your team and your community, conversations with others, the other people in your lives. You really value them quite a lot. Um, you're all about speaking effectively, but it's about knowing when to speak effectively, where to do this, and in what way, how should you speak effectively depending upon the situation. And effective speaking is not a one size fits all. It can be multiple different things depending upon the situation that you're in. They can be very adaptable to the changes that come at them in life. That's another quality of Gemini is they're a mutable sign. They can be very adaptable. They're open to change. They're not stubborn and, holding in fixed like Taurus. They can bend with the wind. They're open to change. They embrace change. So, that is all that I have to say about Jupiter and Gemini in the birth chart. I hope that you found some value from this video, and if you did, please share it. You can also subscribe to my channel so that you do not miss future uploads from me. I post videos every single week, 2 videos a week, a weekly astrology video over one aspect for that week, and a general astrology video such as this one. My next general astrology video will be on Jupiter in Kansas. So that's the next video in this series. And I'm so excited to really delve deep into that because I feel like there's going to be so many layers to that. So many things to talk about with that placement. Um, just like with this one. So I'm excited to get into that. Um, Jupiter in Cancer is a placement that I would certainly like to have in my chart. Um, and so anyway, that is all that I want to say here. Bye for now.